Lloyd is an ugly, disgusting loser whose magic was so weak that he was torched into the afterlife. But even in his dying moments, he couldn't help but admire the beauty of such great magic. All he wished was to learn and master it. God took pity on him, and he was reborn as the 7th princess, sorry I meant 7th prince of the Salum kingdom. Even though he has the most overpowered magic in the entire world, he hides it because all he wants to do is learn everything about magic. The story starts with a bloodied man and some nobles laughing at him. The prince asks him to strike him with his magic, but all he manages is a flame so weak that it couldn't even toast a marshmallow. The crowd mocks him for his puny magic, and the prince recounts the words of a great sage called William Bordeaux, who said the most important things for a mage are lineage, talent, and intelligence, but magic will never smile upon a commoner like him. The prince then releases his flame magic on the guy, but he begins to smile at the magnificence of a royalty's magic. As he burns to ashes, he wishes that he could do something like this, and with his last breath, he prays for another chance to experience the thrill of such magic. Suddenly, he wakes up and he sees himself surrounded by maids holding toys. He thinks they are giants, and he decides to cast a fire spell to defend himself, but he realizes his hands are quite tiny. He accidentally casts a fire spell which bursts through the roof of the castle as fireworks go off, marking his birth, and a kid runs through the kingdom, sharing posters and announcing the birth of the 7th prince of the Salum kingdom named Lloyd. Meanwhile, the maids at the castle are mind-blown by the disaster caused by the newborn baby, while the baby smiles cheekily, proud of his handiwork in the destruction of the castle. 10 years later, we see the maids searching for Lloyd in the castle, but they can't find him. Lloyd comes out of hiding after they leave, and he's about to sneak away from the castle, but he comes across 2 men, and he asks them to not tell the maids that they saw him. One of the men asks Lloyd if he'd like to tag along with them as they go to hunt, but Lloyd leaves him talking to himself. The other man doesn't understand why the man is going through so much effort to gain his favor, as Lloyd, being the 7th prince, has no chance of inheriting the throne, but he tells him that the prince was able to speak shortly after his birth, read spell books instead of children's picture books, and also refused breast milk like a gigachad. He thinks the prince is a reincarnation of the great sage William Bordeaux, but his friend thinks it's ridiculous. Lloyd thinks that the man is right about him being a reincarnation, and he remembers that he was a commoner in his past life, but he doesn't know why his memories are still intact. Though he was born as royalty, he doesn't plan to follow their ambitions of glory, instead he wants to find out how much magic can be discovered in the palace. He sneaks into the royal library, dodging maids left and right, but as he's about to read a book, he's caught by a maid named Sylpha. They engage in swordplay, and Lloyd is able to hold his own against her for a while, but she eventually pushes him back. He thinks that if he doesn't show any improvement she won't let him go till evening, so he uses his magic to copy her moves, and increases the length of his Excalibur to penetrate her giant wall.
What do you mean by that?
He also uses physical enhancement on himself, and uses levitation to make up for the gap in the height, but Sylpha catches onto his trick, and takes him down. However, she is happy to see how talented Lloyd is, and she jumps in joy to find out that he can use 2 spells at once, while Lloyd thinks to himself that he was using 4 spells at once. Sylpha then pulls him to bathe with other maids, but all he wants is to be buried in a pile of magic books. The maids try to scare him by mentioning about the Forbidden Library's demon named Grimoire, who is sealed inside a book, and offers him to sleep with them tonight.
Yeah, boy.
However, Sylpha fights with them, as she thinks that she's the only one allowed to develop a plot with him. Meanwhile, Lloyd is excited about the Forbidden Library, and later at night he sneaks into the library. He breaks the barrier entrance seal, and enters the library. Just then, the demon Grimoire sealed inside the book appears before him, and asks him to unseal him. He tries to bribe Lloyd with gold, but Lloyd realizes that the demon just used a low-quality magic to create fake gold. Grimoire tells him that he'll teach him ancient magic, and Lloyd uses his magic to free him. Lloyd then asks him to remember his promise, and the demon uses a powerful ancient magic to kill Lloyd. However, Lloyd is unharmed, and the demon continues to attack him. Lloyd is excited to see such magic, and the little psycho feels its effect by removing a portion of his barrier. Even though it's painful, he thinks it's beautiful, and asks the Grimoire to show him more magic. The Grimoire then uses his dual incantation to fire an ultimate spell, but the barrier doesn't even budge. Grimoire thinks that this kid is too much for him to handle, and tries to leave, but Lloyd has already casted a barrier above them. He then fires at the Grimoire asking him to show his defensive magic, but the mighty demon gets toasted by his magic. Lloyd wonders why he didn't defend against his attacks. Lloyd then restores the library to its previous state, and he thinks Grimoire is amazing as demons can't be killed with magic. Lloyd wonders how much more he can take, but Grimoire knows that he won't be able to handle his attacks. He makes Lloyd his master, and asks him to make him his familiar. Lloyd agrees, and he transforms into a smaller version. However, his real goal is to get close to him to possess Lloyd's body, but as he goes near him, Grim senses a huge flow of mana, and thinks it would be better to obey him for now. The following day, Prince Albert visits Lloyd in the library, and later, we see them having a shooting match with magic. Albert hits the bullseye with his fire magic, and everyone is impressed by his ability. Lloyd is asked to go next, but he's the overpowered MC who pretends to be weak, so he curves the fireball, and shoots his magic which only grazes the targets. The nobles mock him for his poor skills, and Grim thinks that these morons don't realize that Lloyd manages to graze all his targets, which is even harder than hitting them. Albert leaves with everyone, and gives Lloyd permission to use the shooting gallery. Lloyd is thrilled, and decides to experiment with the double incantation spell which Grim had used. Grim tells him that it's a magic only demons can use, so Lloyd absorbs him into his hand. He asks Grim to cast the magic with him, but Grim is shocked to see a huge collection of spells when he tries to sync with Lloyd, and wonders what's going on. Lloyd tells him it's spell stacking, and he has shortened 100 spells into a single stack. However, Grim didn't sign up for this, and he can't cast such a spell, so Lloyd controls his mouth as well. He recites 2 advanced incantations at once, and Grim is shocked to see such an advanced magic. Meanwhile, Albert is having tea with some nobles, and they mock Lloyd for his weak ability, but Albert knows that Lloyd has purposely grazed all targets. He thinks Lloyd is a prodigy who will become a great sage someday, and by this time Lloyd would have nailed all his targets. Meanwhile, the shooting gallery is fully destroyed, and there is a hole in the sky with night shining through. Lloyd restores it back, and Grim wonders who this kid is. The following day, the Grim reads the news about the mysterious hole in the sky which Lloyd had caused, but Lloyd is more interested in the news about the adventurers who cleared a dungeon. He decides to go to the dungeon, thinking about all the rare items they could find. However, everybody will notice when he's gone, so Lloyd uses corn to create a clone of himself. Grim thinks that this clone is perfect, but Lloyd tells him it won't be enough to fool his over-obsessed maid Sylpha. However, he has a plan, and later, we see him taking off for the dungeon. He communicates with Grim through his hand, and we learn that Lloyd has put Grim's mind into the puppet and absorbed Grim's body into his hand. Grim is amazed by the puppet as it even has mana circulation, and Lloyd tells him that he's lucky to have a familiar like him, making Grim emotional. Lloyd then sees a girl being chased by some orcs, but these poor orcs didn't stand a chance against her martial arts skill, and get killed. Lloyd notices that she's using a special breathing technique, but the girl notices them spying on her, and goes out to confront them. Since Lloyd can't reveal his identity as the 7th prince, he uses his magic to change himself into a Gigachad using the combination of his own and his brother's appearance. The girl is rizzed by his appearance, and she introduces herself as a B-rank adventurer named Tao. She has devoted her entire life to training, so she never made a boyfriend. Seeing Lloyd, her floodgates are released, and she's determined to make him her boyfriend. Lloyd introduces himself as Robert, and they decide to go into the dungeon together. As they go through the dungeon, Tao defeats all the monsters trying to impress Robert, but he is more interested in exploring the dungeon hole rather than exploring her giant hole. Later, during their meal, Robert asks her about the breathing technique she used, and she tells him that it's a special type of chi breathing technique which takes years to master. Robert tries to copy her technique, but realizes that it's very hard to master, and Tao, seeing his great potential, offers to teach him. Meanwhile, Sylpha approaches Lloyd's puppet, and Grim can sense that he's screwed. Back in the dungeon, Tao kills a monster with Chi Blast, and mentions that it was the dungeon boss named Grey Wolf. Tao notices that Robert is getting used to Chi breathing quickly, and starts to dream about making him her fiancé. They then proceed to open the treasure chest, but as soon as Tao opens the chest something attacks her, but Robert saves her. Just then, a lich monster comes out of the chest, and Robert wonders if this is a new boss. He asks Tao about the monster, but she tells him not to worry, and asks him to leave. However, Robert wants to watch, so she uses her technique which sends him flying, hoping that this would take him out of the dungeon. Tao engages in a fight with Lich, and wonders how a low-level dungeon has such a monster which even an A-ranked adventurers are barely a match. Meanwhile, as Robert is flying out, he uses his barrier to stop, which unknowingly crushes two little goblins. He doesn't know why Tao sent him away, so he tries to contact Grim for his opinion, but Grim cries for help to save him, shocking Robert. Meanwhile, Tao is struggling against the Lich, and tries to leave, but Lich tells her that he once ate someone who had Chi technique. He thinks it's low-class magic, and she isn't even worth eating, unlike the boy who saw through his attack. Tao gets pissed, and launches a series of attacks on the Lich using her Chi technique, but he casts a barrier magic. She continues her attack, and finally manages to break his barrier using a powerful Chi blast. However, Lich is unharmed, and mocks her as she exhausted all her energy just to destroy his barrier that isn't even a single finger's worth. He then uses a powerful spell to attack Tao, and she thinks that her life is wasted, but she's saved by Robert, who has casted a barrier around them. He tells her that he'll be taking over now, and engages in a battle with the Lich. He uses an air-class spell using his Chi technique to get behind the Lich in an instant, and the Lich is surprised as he didn't see him using any incantations. Lich tries to attack him, but his barrier won't budge. Robert thinks about combining Chi and mana, but he can't take the full air into his lungs due to the barrier. So he removes his own barrier, but Lich thinks that it got shattered due to his attack, and continues to attack him. Robert keeps dodging his attack, and manages to combine both energies. He uses the combined force to attack Lich, but it's way too weak, so he experiments to fine-tune his technique by attacking the Lich. He laughs like a maniac, and continues to attack Lich, who is shocked that Robert is able to overpower him with just Chi techniques. The Lich casts a barrier to protect itself, but Robert finally masters the technique, and shoots a powerful Chi blast, which slices off Lich along with his barrier in half, killing it. After that, they explore the treasure chest, but all they can find is a rusted knife. Tao thinks that it's worthless, but Robert takes it for an experiment. The dungeon then begins to fall apart, and Robert grabs the treasure chest as he realizes that this is the core of the dungeon, so he can't let it get away, while Tao looks worried as the dungeon is about to collapse. They make it out, and Tao thinks that he's an incredible magician, but wonders why he used Chi technique instead of magic. She wonders if it was because of her, but he tells her it was because he thought it would be fun, ruining her chance for plot development. Robert then realizes that he needs to get back to Grim, so he decides to leave. Tao tells him that the technique he used against Lich is called Chi Blade, and even she can't use that, so she'll train harder to become a girl worthy of his harem.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
As Robert flies away, Tao realizes that she didn't collect any of his contact info. Later, Lloyd returns home, and sees Grim beaten up by Sylpha. Grim can't believe that his worthless ass got beaten down by a maid, and Lloyd tries to console him. The following day, Lloyd analyzes the knife which he got from the dungeon, and learns that it's been treated with mana essence. A special catalyst is used to write magic formula onto the weapons which can strengthen the weapons. He then analyzes how the mana essence is made of, so that he can enchant the weapon himself. He learns that it's made up of oil, silver, and hematite, which is a material made from the monster's core. He thinks he can use the dungeon core which he had obtained, so all he needs for his experiment is silver, oil and a lot of weapons. For silver, he asks his father, who gives him a huge pouch of silver coins, and wonders what he'll buy with his pocket money. Lloyd takes the coins to the secret lab where he melts all the coins with the help of Grim. For oil, he spars with Sylpha, who had agreed to give him some oil, if he managed to beat her. During their fight, Lloyd uses a morphing spell on the ground which surprises Sylpha. He's about to take her down, but she suddenly vanishes. Sylpha, who's chilling underneath, launches a surprise attack, defeating Lloyd. However, she still gives him oil, as she's happy that he's back in his old form, because during their last battle he was so weak that it made her cry. Grim, who is hearing this, wonders that although he didn't use any magic, he still can't believe that she beat him, and she has to be a monster in disguise. Lloyd then uses the oil to create the mana essence, and for the weapons he goes to his brother. Albert asks his guards, and they give him all the weapons, although they are sad as they think that little kid like Lloyd can never successfully perform enchantment, and it will destroy their swords. Grim hears their conversation, and is fired up to make the best legendary sword there is. Lloyd starts writing an absurd amount of spells onto the sword, but the sword breaks as it couldn't withstand such power. After a lot of trial and error, he manages to create 50 enchanted swords out of 120. Albert is surprised, as even a first-rate enchanter has only 10% of success rate, and thinks his brother might be more talented than he thought. However, a soldier thinks that he's just bluffing, but when he tries to sheath his sword, it cuts through the scabbard. Lloyd tells his brother that he wants to see the weapons in action, and Albert invites him to the monster hunt which the king has tasked him with. Lloyd joins Albert and his knights for the monster hunt along with Sylpha. As they venture into the forest, Lloyd wonders if monsters are nearby, but Sylpha tells him that they appear by the lake further down the road. Sylpha notices how Lloyd looks excited as he's rarely allowed to leave the castle, and he wants to see his enchanted weapons in action. Albert notices that Sylpha hardly takes her eyes off Lloyd, but she tells him that she's Lloyd's teacher, so it's natural for her to worry, and thanks him for letting her to be part of this hunt. However, Albert teases her for trying to develop a plot with Lloyd, and she draws out her weapon. Albert wonders if he had gone too far, but she tells him that it's for the monsters who have surrounded them. Just then, the kobolds attack the carriage, and the knights mention that these lower-level monsters will make a good warm-up. Lloyd tries to act scared, but Grim thinks that his acting is pathetic. Lloyd admits that he already saw them coming using his spectral detection, and thinks that this is very useful despite being just a basic chi technique, while Grim thinks that this kid is getting scarier every day. As the battle starts, the knights cut down the kobolds in half with ease, shocking everyone. Even this horse is shocked. The knights are scared to hold such a sharp sword, and they hold them with great care. Lloyd is satisfied with his enchantment, and Albert thinks that his brother is an enchantment prodigy. Sylpha also thinks the same while standing on a bunch of kobold bodies, while Lloyd thinks that he never enchanted Sylpha's sword. Just then, a kobold tries to attack Lloyd, but Tao appears, and kills the kobold. She notices that Lloyd is using chi breathing, and thinks he looks like Robert. Just then, another kobold tries to attack them, and it gets killed by Sylpha. She warns Tao not to be so careless, and not to be so forward with Lloyd, but Tao informs her that she already sensed the monster behind, so she didn't need her help. As the tension begins to rise, Albert comes in between, and suggests that they all go to the lake together, so they can get to know each other better. Later, they set up a camp by the lakeside, and Albert introduces himself as the second prince of the Salum kingdom, shocking Tao. She notices that Albert also looks like Robert, but thinks that he's not the hot guy she sensed. Lloyd, who is hiding behind the tent, realizes that Tao sensed him due to his spectral detection, and decides to lay low in the tent until the monsters show up. As he enters the tent, two giant plots cover his face, and he wonders why Sylpha is changing in his tent. She tells him that she'll be sleeping with him tonight, and although Lloyd tries to leave, she holds him down, but just then his innocence is saved by Tao, who enters his tent sensing Robert's presence.
My son will die a virgin.
Sylpha attacks her as Tao interrupted her plot development, but she manages to dodge in time, and Tao gets into an argument with the perv maid who tried to attack her. Lloyd uses this opportunity to sneak out, and Albert thinks that his brother is quite a playboy. Meanwhile, the girls notice the knights who are excited about their cat fight, so the girls beat down the perv knights, and Albert warns his brother to be careful when engaging in relationships with women. Tao then reveals that she was asked to fix up an old shrine on top of that hill, and Albert invites her to stay over until morning. Just then, a bear-wolf monster appears, and tries to attack a knight, but Tao uses her chi blast to knock it down. The bear-wolf stands up, and Albert uses the enchanted sword's ability to attack it with his fire magic, burning it to crisp. Everyone praises Albert, and he praises Lloyd's enchantment. Grimm remembers that this shrine was used to imprison a demon, and just then the defeated bear-wolf stands up again. Several monsters appear around them, and a demon named Pazuzu appears from the bear-wolf's mouth, who is pissed that these lowly humans took down his kin. He orders the monsters to attack them, and they engage in a battle. Albert and the others notice that the monsters are healing instantly as they attack them, and they realize that it's due to the demon's power. Meanwhile, Lloyd asks Grimm about the demon, who informs him that the demon is transmuting its mana to control the monsters like a puppet. Lloyd asks Grimm to teach him transmutation magic, while others fight the monster. Pazuzu notices Lloyd who is being guarded by Sylpha, and mocks him, which pisses off Sylpha. She then goes to confront the demon, and covers her face with her hand. Pazuzu wonders if she's about to cry, but she tells him that she's trying to cover her nose as his breath stinks more than his ugly face.
That one there was a violation, personally I wouldn't have it.
After getting roasted by the perv maid, Pazuzu tries to attack her, but notices that she has already cut off all his paws. Pazuzu heals itself, and Albert notices that the other monsters have stopped moving and they are regenerating slowly, so they have a chance at victory when the demon is wounded, and asks Sylpha to continue attacking the demon. Meanwhile, Grimm is teaching transmutation magic to Lloyd, and tells him that this technique can take years to master. He asks Lloyd to start by changing color and add shape to his mana. Lloyd uses his mana to create a flower, and even adds a smell, and Grimm can't believe that he was able to perfect the technique in such a short time. On the other hand, Sylpha borrows an enchanted sword from one of the knights and overpowers Pazuzu with ease, while Pazuzu wonders why such a strong person is babysitting a kid. He tries to distract Sylpha by mocking about killing and dissecting Lloyd, which annoys Sylpha. Pazuzu then attacks her thinking that he finally got her, but she cuts him down from inside. She uses her dual sword technique to separate the demon from the bear-wolf, and everyone is shocked to see Sylpha's strength. Pazuzu then releases his poisonous miasma, which makes Albert and the knights fall down. Even Sylpha is affected by his mana, and Pazuzu attacks her, sending her flying. Pazuzu tries to attack her again, but Tao blocks his attack. Sylpha asks Tao to mind her own business as she's fine, but she collapses as well. Pazuzu notices that Tao is using a special type of breathing due to which she's the least affected, and starts attacking her, which starts disrupting her breathing. Pazuzu asks her to be his minion, but she tells him that she is only into hot guys, and would never be into a ugly loser like him.
Emotional, damn it!
She strikes him with her thunder magic, and tries to get her breathing in order, but just then one of the monsters begins attacking her. Pazuzu wonders which hot guy is she referring to, as all he can see is a bunch of trash, pathetically splayed out on the ground, but his minions rise up over and over again. Pazuzu then uses his maximum domination miasma, but as Tao is losing consciousness, she can sense a presence nearby, and he's the hottest guy ever, who will kick Pazuzu's ass. The monster swallows her, and Pazuzu turns to Sylpha to make her under his control. Meanwhile, Lloyd, who's playing around, overhears this, and wonders if this is how he controlled the monster werewolves. Pazuzu proudly admits that he killed their parents, and used his miasma to replace them in the pup's mind, but suddenly wonders why Lloyd isn't being affected, and able to move freely inside his miasma. Pazuzu then notices Grim, and realizes that he's a demon. He wonders if Grim is protecting him, and thinks that it's a shame that Grim serves a human. Grim starts to give him some advice, but changes his mind, and he just wants to see him destroyed. Pazuzu asks the werewolves to attack them, and Lloyd uses his mana transmutation magic which overrides the control of Pazuzu. He asks the werewolf who swallowed Tao to spit her up, and Pazuzu tries to get his control back. However, Grim tells him that it's useless, as the werewolves have remembered everything including the fact that he killed their parents. The werewolves then attack Pazuzu, and Lloyd is impressed by their coordination. However, Pazuzu overpowers them, and starts beating them up. He then tells Lloyd that no matter how many spells he uses, demons can't be killed by magic, and Lloyd wonders if they really can't die or are really hard to kill. Lloyd is thrilled, and releases his mana, shocking Pazuzu. Lloyd tries to capture Pazuzu in his barrier, but he evades it. Pazuzu realizes that he's trying to experiment on him, and tries to run away barely evading all the barriers that Lloyd is casting to catch him. Grim is surprised by the amount of spells he can cast at once, and Lloyd tells him he can cast even more if he joins him. Grim then merges into his hands, and they finally manage to capture Pazuzu. Lloyd knows that Pazuzu has been doing chimera experiments with the monsters, and now it's his turn to be experimented on. Pazuzu is scared, and tells him that he has never been hit by someone with overpowered magic as him, so he may actually die. Lloyd couldn't care less, and casts 240 spells per minute. He hopes to run it for half an hour, but Lloyd is disappointed as Pazuzu gets wasted in under 5 minutes. Lloyd notices that everyone is waking up, so he decides to run off to cover his tracks. While he joins Albert and others, Pazuzu wonders how his legacy came crashing down instantly despite his hundreds of years of preparation. Grim tells Pazuzu that people like to follow someone who enjoys themselves, and he's glad that Lloyd does what he likes, the way he likes. However, he regains his composure, and tells Pazuzu that he's just saving his strength to get his revenge someday. As Pazuzu withers away, he entrusts his ambition to Grim, who absorbs Pazuzu, which restores his mana a bit, but thinks that he can't beat Lloyd yet. Meanwhile, Lloyd lies to everyone that a person named Robert came and defeated the demon, and Tao looks around desperately to catch a glimpse of him. They return to the castle, and the king praises Albert for defeating the monsters. He asks about the adventurers Tao and Robert, and Albert tells him that Robert had already gone by the time they woke up. Tao went after Robert, and we learn that Tao had noticed the poncho which was Robert's, but before she could realize that Lloyd was wearing it, Lloyd distracts her by pointing to have seen Robert in the forest, and she runs off to find him. Albert then mentions that Lloyd has contributed to the most in this hunt as he enchanted their weapons, and they should consider him to be part of the royal succession. The king asks Lloyd if he would like to contest, however, Lloyd declines the offer. Lloyd is then seen playing in the courtyard with a werewolf who followed them home while the others return to the forest. Grim gets jealous to see Lloyd petting the werewolf, and changes his form to impress him, but just then Sylpha comes in, and Lloyd hides him in the werewolf. Lloyd tells Sylpha that he had named the werewolf Shiro, and he wants to teach him many things. Sylpha informs him about the complex commands used by the monster tamers who control them via mana, and Lloyd is excited to try it out. Grim thinks that Lloyd's stupid to reject the throne, and he's a real magic maniac. Meanwhile, the king thinks that Lloyd is so modest that he rejected the throne. However, Albert thinks that Lloyd is destined for greater things, and the king is looking forward to his future. Lloyd then tries to tame Shiro, who can follow some basic commands, but when Lloyd tries to perform some complex command imbued with magic, Shiro starts dancing in confusion. Sylpha suggests that he should meet a monster expert to find a solution, and suddenly both Lloyd and Sylpha think of the same person. They then head out to meet with this monster expert, and Grim wonders who this person is. Lloyd tells him that it's his older sister, and the sixth princess of Salum Kingdom, Elise de Salum. She's an animal lover who keeps all kinds of animals including monsters in her tower. Just then, Elise suddenly comes running down, and jumps onto Lloyd. She gives him a kiss sucking out his soul, and Sylpha wonders if she should kiss him as well to revive him. Elise maid Eris scolds her for trying to develop a plot with Lloyd. Elise tells her that she can't help it as he's the Riz Lord.
Your Riz is spreading.
God!
Soon, you'll have unspoken Riz.
No!
She wonders if he visited her because of this bear wolf, and Lloyd is surprised that she managed to tell that Shiro is a bear wolf. Sylpha thinks that this dumb girl can't help them, and tells Lloyd that they should leave, but Lloyd thinks otherwise. He asks Elise to show one of her monsters, but they are surprised to learn that she has already summoned it, and it already grabbed Sylpha's hairband. Elise introduces the monster as the lesser Fenrir named Liru, and Lloyd is excited as it manages to slip past his detection, but the real shock was that the Fenrir had managed to perform such complex orders without Elise showing any indication of issuing any command. He's impressed by his sister's ability and asks her to teach him so that he can communicate with Shiro. Elise tells him that the key to communication is love, and she shows off her control by using the animals to show their love to them. Although Sylpha and Eris are a bit uncomfortable, Lloyd is excited. Sylpha thinks that Lloyd is showing interest in love, and she imagines hardcore plot development with him. Meanwhile, Lloyd realizes that his sister is sharing her will to the animals as he had noticed mana flowing directly from her head to the animal's head. She can subconsciously connect to animals via mana, and gives them a direct vision of what she wants. Lloyd then tries to share his will onto Shiro, and it perfectly performs all the actions as Lloyd has desired. Eris thinks that Lloyd is gifted as he was able to link his mind with Shiro like a monster tamer. However, Sylpha is disappointed as the things she had in mind were entirely different.
Damn!
Elise thinks that he's doing it wrong as it's all about love, and Lloyd tells her that love also plays an important element as it can be used to create empathy with the animals, which makes them easier to sync with. Moved by his words, all the girls jump over him, while Lloyd realizes that her sister is still in sync with animals as they are also trying to express their love to him. Later they head back home, and Lloyd is glad that he was able to figure out how to connect with monsters. Sylpha then invites him for sword training, but he's saved by Albert, who is there to introduce him to his older brother, the fourth prince, Tien. He has heard that Lloyd is able to enchant spellbound swords, and he wants to see Lloyd's skills with his own eyes. Albert tells him that Tien is a blacksmith, who traveled at the age of 10 to learn smithing for the sake of the kingdom. Lloyd thinks it as impressive, and Tien asks him to start enchanting. Tien thinks that enchanting a sword requires great skill, and this lowly boy is probably bluffing, but he's shocked when Lloyd completes his enchantment. Tien can't believe that Lloyd managed to engrave multiple abilities in a single enchantment and realizes that Lloyd is the real deal. He's glad as now he can create the ultimate spellbound sword with Lloyd's help, and calls him Lodi Boy. He mentions that if they engrave spells during forging, it will let them apply more advanced magic than normally possible. Lloyd gets interested in the production process, and agrees to help him. They get down to business and Tien wants a sword that will shoot fire whenever it's swung. Lloyd tries to use a high-level fireball spell by compressing it into 2 parts, but when he tries to apply, the material breaks into pieces. He tries again by splitting the spell into 4 parts, but it breaks again. Sylpha also joins them in helping with the smithing, but the material keeps breaking. Lloyd wonders why they keep failing even though he reduced the spell to normal fireball. Grim senses something wrong with the mana essence, and they learn that Tien bought these low-quality mana essence at a cheap store. Lloyd uses his Purify spell on the mana essence and learns that it barely has any hematite in it, so the mana essence is as worthless as his brother. He thinks that he has to sneak out again to hunt monsters in the dungeon. However, Sylpha has already spoken with the king about letting Lloyd adventuring, so they head to the Adventurers Guild to register. There they meet with the receptionist Katarina, who asks Lloyd to touch her ball. I meant the crystal ball to measure his mana, but Lloyd thinks that her ball couldn't handle his touch and it would explode.
What do you mean by that?
He focuses on compressing his mana to the level of a flea, and gets an overall rating of E rank. The adventurers there mock him for such a weak rank, but Katarina notices that he has A rank in magical aptitude, and he's the most promising adventurer since the Silver Blade, who was held as the legendary adventurer, conquering several dungeons to reach A rank and then suddenly disappeared. Katarina tells them that the dungeon quest requires at least one B rank adventurer, and Sylpha tries to register herself. One of the adventurers asks Sylpha to ditch the kid and join them, but since the pedo girl is only interested in young boys, she splits his mustache in an instant, and it's revealed that Sylpha is Silver Blade. However, due to re-registration she has been demoted to C rank, but just then Tao appears offering to help as she's a B rank adventurer. She had searched everywhere in the dungeon for Robert, but couldn't find him, so she wants Lloyd to set up a date with his brother Albert in return for this favor. Lloyd is amazed to learn about Sylpha's adventures, but she tells him there were some foes which she failed to capture and they are known as the Assassin Guild. After that, they all visit various dungeons collecting materials while Albert visits Jian wondering when he'll be done. Jian notices that Albert is a bit worried and he wonders if war is coming. He assures Albert that they will produce weapons as soon as Lloyd returns, but Albert tells him not to worry about it. Just then, Lloyd returns with a chest full of hematite, and they finally manage to make the super enchanted sword. They head out to the testing ground, and as Jian swings the sword at the target it obliterates the entire area, shocking everyone, while Lloyd thinks that he should tone it down next time. Later at night, Lloyd feels exhausted after a tiring day. Just then, he senses someone outside, and is surprised that even Shiro didn't manage to sense its presence. Lloyd wonders who it could be and we see a masked girl. As the girl tries to flee, Lloyd appears in front of her at light speed, and greets her. She tries to escape, but Lloyd has already casted a barrier. As Lloyd walks to her, she removes her disguise, and releases a spell. Lloyd realizes that it's poison, and he neutralizes it using his Purify spell, but she increases its effect which makes Lloyd drop to his knees. Lloyd thinks that she's using an unknown toxin as his Purify spell should work on all types of poison. He notices that she's transmuting the nature of her poison with mana, which makes him remember that there are some individuals born with a special type of mana, and those who have threatening abilities are called the Blighted. She tells him that she's the Poison Blighted whose body has been spreading poison ever since she was born, and she introduces herself as Ren, the Poison Moth. She walks up to the barrier, and breaks it. She tells Lloyd that he has only taken a bit of her poison so he won't die, but he'll suffer for a few days. She leaves, and Lloyd is impressed by her. Grim appears, and wonders if Lloyd is fine. Lloyd tells him that he has used a health class spell to heal himself which is stronger than Ren's poison, but Grim wonders why he let her go, and Lloyd reveals that he wants her to lead him to their hideout as he's sure that Ren is a member of the Assassin Guild. He's excited to see what ability other Assassin Guild members hold, and proceeds to follow Ren. In the Assassin Guild hideout, Ren tells them about her encounter with Lloyd, but she didn't kill him as he was just a kid. She informs them about the kingdom mass-producing Spellbound swords, and thinks that they are preparing for war. Just then, one of the members notices Lloyd, and Lloyd lifts his cloaking spell as he's been discovered. Ren is surprised as Lloyd shouldn't have been able to move due to her poison, and the members think that they can't let him leave as he knows about them. Lloyd removes his barrier, and Grim is shocked. Lloyd tells him that he wants to experience their abilities, and defending them would be no fun. Lloyd gets into his martial arts stance, and one of the assassins attacks him, but he blocks his attack. The assassin is impressed by his martial arts skill, and Lloyd notices that he's very flexible. The assassin introduces himself as Babylon the giant rat with the ability Warp Blighted, and he's so flexible that he can twist his entire body around enough to fit through the tiniest of spaces. Just then, another assassin whispers to him to sink, and Lloyd's body suddenly feels heavy. This assassin is known as Crow the Dark Raptor, and the mana in his words makes him curse blighted. Lloyd enhances his strength to overcome the curse, and engages with another assassin Galileath the Spider, who can transmute the mana around his body's sticky fluid, and he's the web blighted. Lloyd ditches some of his clothes to escape, and just then, the girl assassin tries to attack him. She then stabs her own leg, and Lloyd gets hurt in the same place. She introduces herself as Talia the 100 Pains, and she can share the damage with anyone she can see, and she's the pain blighted. She thinks that Lloyd would be afraid now, however, he's excited, and heals the wound. Talia is surprised that the healing worked so fast, and Lloyd wonders what would happen if he injures her. He then assumes Sylpha's battle stance, which reminds Galilea of the Silver Blade. Lloyd attacks Babylon, and Crow uses his speech to attack Lloyd, but he dodges, and the attack hits Galilea, who crashes into Talia. Lloyd attacks Crow, and takes him out before he could speak. Meanwhile, Galilea is in a sticky situation with Talia, and he tries to free himself, but this tears down Talia's clothes, revealing her full plot armor. Lloyd attacks Talia, and she tells that they are linked, so any attack on her will reflect onto him, but that's exactly what he wants. She's surprised, and he attacks her, which also reflects the pain onto him, but the psychopath is happy to experience the pain. Just then Galilea captures him, but Lloyd escapes from his grasp, and uses his martial art technique, which sends him flying. He asks Ren to attack him, and she realizes that this boy is crazy. Galilea tells him that Ren can't control her poison, so if she starts spreading it they'll all be caught in it. Lloyd realizes that none of them have control over their powers, and Galilea mentions that if they did, they wouldn't have ended up as outlaws. He charges at Lloyd, and Lloyd uses a special attack to strike him down. Ren is furious and tries to attack Lloyd, but Galilea tells her to stop as he's fine. However, he's not just fine, his mana is also under control, and Lloyd tells him that he engraved a spell directly on his body so that he can control his powers. Galilea bursts into tears of joy as this curse is finally over, and Lloyd engraves the spell on the rest of the assassins. Crow is moved to tears as he can finally speak, and they are overjoyed as now they can control their powers. Talia then dresses Lloyd in Ren's cloth, and Ren wonders when he became one of their members. Ren tells them that he's an enemy as he produced mass weapons and snuck into their hideout, but Grimm tells him that it was all part of his hobby. Ren wonders what kind of psychopath has hobbies like this, and why this goat can fly and talk. Galilea tells Lloyd that they want to explain their situation, but all Lloyd is interested in is their powers. Galilea tells him about the leader Jade the Shadow Wolf, who is the phantom blighted with the power of teleportation, which gets Lloyd interested. Galilea recalls about Jade, who unintentionally gets teleported to unknown places. He once showed them a coin with wolf head, and named them Assassin Guild, and told them that they would do the jobs which the Adventure Guild couldn't. They would leave this coin behind each scene so everyone would know they were helping behind the scenes. Jade hoped that one day they would be recognized, and they wouldn't have to live underground anymore, but he suddenly got teleported. Since then they have been doing such jobs, and that's when they heard about the Lord of Lordest preparing for war, but Lloyd is more interested in knowing Jade's ability. Just then, a letter appears in front of them. Some time later, Sylpha arrives with Shiro searching for Lloyd, but she only sees a letter from Lloyd which informs her that he's going to visit the Lord of Lodost's manor with the Assassin Guild, and gives it to Albert, who initially thinks that Lloyd is kidnapped, and thinks about going to war. Tien doesn't think that anyone would kidnap Lloyd, and Albert agrees to pursue a peaceful resolution. Just then, Sylpha shows him some of Lloyd's clothes which are sticky, and Albert thinks that something terrible must have happened to Lloyd. So he declares war and Sylpha agrees with him, while Lloyd is flying towards the Lordest Manor with the Assassin Guild. After they had got the letter, Galilea opened it, and in the letter Jade has apologized for not contacting them for so long. He has overthrown the rulers of Lordest, and has become the Lord. He's ready to receive them all as promised, and he has prepared a celebration to welcome them all at the Lordest Manor. Everyone is overjoyed, and they decide to go to Lordest. Ren asks Lloyd to join them as he can imprint on Jade, so that he can control his powers, but Lloyd points out that the letter was teleported accurately to their location, which means that Jade can control his powers. The members start to wonder if this is a trap, but Ren thinks that Jade must have learned to control his powers. Lloyd tells them that there is no need for him to go with them, but he will still accompany them as he needs to know about Jade's teleportation ability. Also, if something goes wrong, he will take care of it, and Ren has fallen for his riz. At present, Lloyd lands near to Lordest, but notices that the others are worn out due to the flight, and suggests that they take a break and walk the rest of the way. Ren tells him that she will get something to eat, and runs into the woods. Lloyd learns that when she was young she ended up killing her parents due to the poison, and she was living in the forest on her own. Jade was the one who reached out to her and brought her to the guild. He introduced her as poison blighted, and the others were not sure about keeping her due to her poison. Jade doesn't care about it and hugs Ren, but ends up coughing blood. However, Jade declares that he will live here with Ren, no matter what, and others support him. Jade then researches a lot, and comes up with a spell to neutralize her mana, which they use to make an outfit to keep her poison in check. Ren was moved by their action, and ever since then Jade has been like a brother to Ren. Lloyd then notices the spells on Ren's outfit, and he's interested to meet Jade, while Grim thinks Jade must be something as Lloyd is interested in him. Later, Ren prepares stew for everyone, and Galilea is having a nightmare seeing the dish. Babylon asks Crow to use his cursed speech to make the dish taste good, but Ren knocks him out with her poison. She tells everyone to try it out as it's good, but they think that her dish is as worthless as her ugly face, and someone like Prince Lloyd would never eat it.
Emotional, damn it!
However, they're shocked to see Lloyd devouring the stew. Lloyd recalls that in his past life he was an ugly dead broke loser who ate way worse stuff. Others also taste her food, and they like it as well. She never got to cook before because of her poison, and now she hopes that Jade would also taste her food. She recalls about a day where Jade informed them about Adventurer Guild reconsidering the bounties on their head which will help them to live normal lives, and Jade confesses that he's the third son of Lordest. He's a noble who wanted to use them to stop the war within his family, and apologizes for manipulating them. However, they don't really care about it, and they already knew he was a noble from the way he acted, but Ren is absolutely shocked to hear this news. The other members are grateful as he gave them hope, and they wish to assist him. However, Jade decides to take care of this on his own, as he doesn't want them to get involved because this will cause their bounties to increase, and they will never know freedom. They are the only family he experienced, and he makes them promise to keep the guild going even if he never came back. However, if he does come back, he would have become the ruler of Lordest, and he'll make it a territory where the blighted can live happily. Hearing the story, Grim thinks that Jade is awesome, and they continue their dinner. Later, the group walks towards the Lordest Manor, and Lloyd is asleep. Galilea thinks he looks cute while sleeping, but realizes that he still has a barrier up in his sleep. Ren thinks that they should head out first to the manor, as it's possible that Jade might have been forced to write the letter. She asks Grim to stay with Lloyd while they check out the manor, however, Grim is more worried about them, and decides to join them. They put Lloyd on the ground and head out to the manor and notice that everyone is preparing for celebration. Just then, one of the residents notices them and takes them inside where everyone welcomes them to the manor. They are served a luxurious meal and Grim tries to head back to get Lloyd, but Ren asks him to stay longer as she's nervous to meet Jade. Jade comes to meet them and changes his outfit to the old one. His friends are glad to see him and also surprised as he mastered his teleportation ability. Ren is moved to tears seeing Jade, but to her shock Jade doesn't care about it. He uses a powerful version of Crow's curse speech to make them all bow down, and the other residents in his manor transform to demons. Jade tells the demons that they can choose the body of any blighted from these fine collections, and he points to Ren saying that she's the poison blighted but he had forgotten her name. Grim uses his magic to attack Jade and realizes what he is, but before he could say anything further, Jade teleports to his side and attacks him, sending him flying. He crashes down beside Lloyd which wakes him up. Lloyd wonders why Grim is so beaten down, and he explains the situation to him. Meanwhile, Jade tells the Assassin Guild members that everyone here is a demon who he brought from Netherworld, and he came here for the body of Jade because of his teleportation ability. He introduces himself as Guisarme, the calamity from Netherworld, and tells them that Jade is dead as he took over his body. It took him months to wear down Jade's mind, and Jade cared about his friends until the end as he tried to kill himself to protect them, but Guisarme revived him. He eventually killed Jade's mind and took over his body. Some of the demons then wish to possess Ren, and Guisarme tells them they should be careful with her as she killed her parents with her poison. Just then, he notices the spell engraved on her arm, and uses the cursed speech to reveal the person who did this. Ren bites her lips and tries to resist, but Guisarme keeps pressuring her to reveal the person. Just then, some spells cover them, and a huge explosion occurs which creates a giant hole in the manor. The Assassin Guild members are shocked to see this, and they see Lloyd above them, who tells Guisarme that he is the person who Guisarme is looking for. Lloyd then checks on Ren, and heals her injuries. He asks the Assassin Guild members to run away while he takes care of the rest. Ren doesn't want to go, but Galilea grabs her, and they start running. He tells her that they would only be getting in the way of Lloyd, so they should run away. Meanwhile, the demons wonder if Guisarme is dead, but just then, he teleports behind one of the demons, and knocks him into the fire. He tells the other demons to capture the Assassin Guild members, and they go after them. Lloyd uses his magic to attack them, but most of the demons survive, and they try to attack Lloyd. Guisarme uses his cursed speech of death to attack him, and Lloyd is surprised as it slips in through his barrier. Lloyd is curious, and wonders if he should let the attack hit or dodge. However, Grimm puts some sense into the Psycho MC, and he dodges the attack which hits another demon, killing it instantly. Lloyd analyzes the spell's effect on the demon and learns that it died due to cardiac arrest. Grimm tells Lloyd that Guisarme doesn't need spells as his mana is creating these effects directly. Lloyd notices the attack resembling Crow's cursed speech but much more effective. Usually when facing a spell, one can use a wall of mana to defend against it, but when an attack is directed only with mana it's like water attacking the barrier which can slip through the gaps. If Guisarme was someone like Pazuzu, Lloyd could have easily overwhelmed with his mana, but in this case, Guisarme mana might be able to pierce Lloyd's heart. Grimm tells Lloyd that demons are divided into classes, and the demons down there are 10th class trash demons. Pazuzu was a 8th class demon, and he is a 3rd class demon. Lloyd wonders if Guisarme is a 1st class demon, but Grimm tells him that he's a royalty who is higher than 1st class demon which even a 101st class demon couldn't defeat. Grimm thinks that Lloyd doesn't stand a chance, and they should run away. However, Lloyd is excited and goes toward Guisarme. He introduces himself as the 7th prince, and they both get excited to fight with each other. Grimm thinks that they're outmatched as attacking demons with magic is like attacking a fish with water. For low-class demons Lloyd may be able to get them with the right amount of pressure, but Guisarme is on another level, and he's the kind of freak you would find in the deepest depths. Just then, Guisarme attacks Lloyd which manages to break several layers of Lloyd's barrier, and Grimm is shocked that the barrier was pierced so easily with puny scraps of mana while his attack on Lloyd's barrier didn't even budge. Guisarme then creates a lot of mana spears, and attacks Lloyd. Although Lloyd dodges some of them, the attack manages to destroy some layers of his barrier. Guisarme then teleports at the top of his barrier, and destroys it with a kick. The spears merge and attack Lloyd, but he blocks it using his earth magic. Both the Assassin Guild and the demons are surprised by this extraordinary level of power display, and the demon remembers that they are supposed to catch the assassins. They start to chase them, and Galilea asks Babylon to open up the gates of the fort. Meanwhile, Grimm is terrified to see such an attack, and Guisarme is surprised that he couldn't manage to pressure Lloyd without his teleportation ability. Lloyd tells him that teleportation ability belongs to Jade, and Guisarme mentions that he can fully control his power unlike Jade. Their kinds are born masters of mana, while blighted like Jade who are born with gifts lack the wisdom to use them. Guisarme then attacks Lloyd with a powerful move called Shadow Wolf, which teleports the attack, and pierces through Lloyd's body. Meanwhile, Galilea uses his ability to slow down the demons, and Crow also uses his cursed speech to attack them. Babylon manages to open the gate, however, the demon frees themselves and runs toward them. Talia attacks them using her ability, and asks others to flee. The demon revives using their regeneration ability, but she keeps attacking herself to buy time for others. Ren tries to help her, but Galilea pushes her, and closes the gate. He decides to stay with Talia to support her, so the others can escape. Talia then decides to sacrifice herself to kill all the demons, and proceeds to cut her head off. Meanwhile, Guisarme is disappointed that Lloyd got defeated so easily, and hoped that he had more fun. Just then, he notices that it was a dummy, and Lloyd attacks him, but he escapes using his teleportation ability. This makes Guisarme excited, and Lloyd requests him to shift their fight to somewhere else. We then see the fire attack from the Salum army which attacks the demons, and Albert appears with Sylpha and others. He's here to rescue Lloyd, and asks his army to use the Spellbound sword to attack the demons. Sylpha recalls practicing her sword skills on a dummy, and she manages to cut through them easily, but the only problem is that her sword bends if she puts her full strength into the strike. At this rate she would have to hold back during the battle, but the demon she's fighting is stronger than a dummy, and she doesn't have the luxury to hold back. Meanwhile, Ren is happy to see that help has arrived, but Albert and Sylpha turn towards them and decide to take them down for trying to kidnap Lloyd. Tien suggests that they should be dealing with the demons first, but Sylpha thinks otherwise, and asks them about Lloyd. They tell him that Lloyd is fighting for their sake, and as Ren is about to tell them whom he's fighting, Babylon makes her recall their promise to Prince Lloyd to keep his abilities secret, so she tells Sylpha that he's fighting a total loser in the manner and the other members agrees with her. Sylpha isn't convinced, and proceeds to cut her head off. Albert stops her, and the Assassin Guild thinks that he's the kindest of all princes. However, he tells Sylpha that she should start with someone older. He shows them Lloyd's underwear, and thinks that Lloyd would never fight for people who hung up his underwear as a warning. Galilea tries to explain that his underwear was stained by his white fluid so they had to wash it, but this explanation only makes Sylpha and Albert piss off more. Ren steps in and explains that they're grateful to them for saving her family, and she doesn't mind being punished, but those demons have taken their leader Jade who is part of her family, and this is why Lloyd is fighting for them. Just then, a demon tries to attack them, but Elise takes care of it with Liru's help, and tells them that she believes her story as if they had any ill intent, Liru would have sensed it. Albert decides to trust his sister, and they decide to deal with demons. Sylpha heads to find Lloyd, and Ren tries to stop her, but Sylpha tells her to shut up. Just then, the bridge gets destroyed by one of Guisarme's attacks, and Tien notices the demons crossing the river to head across the bank to get around and trap them. Albert orders everyone to get back to the river bank while Sylpha is pissed that she can't reach Lloyd. Guisarme asks if this is more convenient for him, and Lloyd tells him that he's satisfied. He suddenly starts attacking Lloyd who dodges his attack, and Grim notices that Lloyd is carrying a sword. Meanwhile, Albert and the soldiers fight the demon, and seeing this Lloyd thinks that he can focus completely on Guisarme. The soldiers keep attacking the demons with their enchanted sword, and Tien attacks them with Delord, but they keep on regenerating. Albert thinks that if this keeps up, the flame smoke will make Elise and Sylpha harder to attack. However, he notices that Sylpha is missing, as she's busy trying to get to Lloyd, and asks Shiro to jump over the broken bridge using a rope. Galilea thinks it's too far, and they can't make it. Shiro, thinking about his master, makes the jump even before Sylpha could tie the rope, but he falls into the river. Sylpha then thinks about making the jump, but just then a demon climbs up, and attacks her. She blocks his attack, and the demon introduces himself as an 8th class demon who is a practitioner of the supreme swords called the Demon Blade form. Sylpha wonders if there were classes assigned to demons, and what class Pazuzu was. The demon tells them that they're just insects to him, and Sylpha points out that he has a poop on his head which makes the demon mad. Meanwhile, Albert is concerned about the people who have been inhabited by the demons, and just then, a demon tries to attack him, but Babylon jumps in to save him and takes down the demon. Albert notices that Babylon didn't hesitate at all, and Babylon thinks that Albert is similar to Jade as he is so nice, and tells him that they never disrespected people's lives despite being branded as outcasts. He tells Albert there's no way to save the people because their hearts are already dead and they are now just demons in human skin. Albert thanks Babylon for the advice, and states that the citizens of Lordest won't have to suffer anymore as he's going to set them free. Albert then unleashes a powerful attack which sends a rain of huge flames down the sky, and tells the soldier that from now onwards they will battle with an intent to kill. Meanwhile, Sylpha fights with the 8th class demon, but he blocks her attack. They engage in a fierce sword fight, and use their ultimate moves to attack each other, while the Assassin Guild wonders about the identity of the maid who can hold her own against the demon. Sylpha and the demon face minor injuries, but the demon heals himself, and mocks her as he has the power to use human bodies beyond their limit. He's impressed by Sylpha, and is now interested in taking over Sylpha's body instead of the blighted one because he wants to improve his demonic blade form. He then uses a Lourdes-style technique to attack Sylpha which surprises everyone. He reveals that this is the technique of the previous owner of this body who dedicated his life to sword training, and promises to wear Sylpha's body next until she's torn apart. Sylpha then attacks using the demon sword form, and the demon is surprised that she can use his technique. She mentions that she just learned it by watching him, and mocks him that since he needs to steal bodies to learn technique, his brain must also be filled with poop. The demon is enraged, and just then Shiro climbs up the bridge. Sylpha looks for something inside Shiro's fur, and finds a sword. She recalls that this was made by Lloyd and Jen specially for her, and it's super strong and flexible. Lloyd tells her that although demons can't be killed with magic, they can't do anything without a body. If they possess a powerful body they can keep regenerating, and to kill such demons they would need to strike them down with a single attack. Whenever he saw Sylpha swinging her sword it looked like she was holding back, but with this sword she won't have to hold back, and Sylpha promised to cherish the sword. Jen suggests naming the sword after them and calls it Dalofa, but Sylpha likes the name Loifa better. However, she decides to rename it towards redeeming her recent failures, and in the present she draws the sword calling it Demon Bane, as calling it Demon Slayer may cause copyright issues. The demon mocks her that she can't take down demons, and they will turn this country into ruins. It was their plan to lure Jade by planning for war, and Ren is devastated on learning this. She rushes to attack the demon, but Sylpha knocks her, telling her not to get in the way. Sylpha then uses her ultimate move, and splits the demon's body into pieces. The story then goes back in time where Guisarme tells Jade that he should make peace with his death, and just as Jade consciousness is about to fade, he tells Guisarme that he's going to lose. Guisarme then takes over Jade's body, and gets access to all his memory and powers. His minion congratulates him on obtaining Jade's power, and Guisarme tells him to prepare for a big war. Back in the present, Sylpha pays respect to the owner of the body who was taken over by the demon, and thinks that she would have enjoyed sparring against his Lourdes style. The assassin members also pray for him, and Sylpha thinks that they don't seem to be cut out for being assassins, while Galilee and Crow remember Sylpha's identity as the Silver Blade. Just then, a huge explosion occurs, and Sylpha wonders where all this steam is coming from. They are shocked to learn that the whole river has evaporated, and we see Lloyd thinking that he shouldn't have done that. A while ago, when Lloyd was evading Guisarme attacks, he thinks that Guisarme attacks come in a few different patterns. They can pierce through a single and double-layered barrier with ease, and if he is hit by them then it will mean instant death. Cursed speech is the only thing that can pass through his barrier, but it travels slowly. Lastly, the most dangerous attack called Shadow Wolf, which can teleport the attacks. Due to this, Lloyd needs to always move at high speed, and if he delays for more than 2 seconds, it would be instant death. He realizes that Guisarme is going all out to make him run out of stamina, so he will need to start attacking. Lloyd then uses a high-level Inferno spell to attack Guisarme, who thinks that such an attack won't kill him, but he'd rather not have his clothes burned up to reveal his full plot armor. He teleports away, and the spell hits the river. Due to the steam, Lloyd can't see anything, and uses his GPS skill to find Guisarme's location. He wonders what Guisarme is doing that far away, and Grim reminds him to keep moving to avoid the Shadow Wolf. Lloyd notices that he wasn't attacked by Shadow Wolf even though he stopped there for a while, and realizes that Guisarme can only teleport to the place which is in his line of sight. This is why Lloyd has not been attacked so far, as Guisarme can't see him due to the steam. Lloyd then attacks him with his clones, and Guisarme can't tell which one is real. He lets the clone strike him, and kills the one holding the real sword, thinking that it must be Lloyd's real body, but notices that the clones are not disappearing. He realizes that Lloyd is still alive, and he must be planning to attack him from above, but Lloyd attacks him from the front using his fire spell. As Guisarme recovers, he thinks that his Shadow Wolf is basically useless because of these clones, but he still has many ways to deal with them. Meanwhile, Lloyd, who is hiding among the clones, thinks that this plan is risky, but he's too close to pulling it off. Just then, Guisarme launches a large number of mana spears, destroying most of the clones, and one of the spears crashes into a barrier. He teleports, and grabs Lloyd's head inside the barrier, thinking that this must be the real one since it's protected by the barrier. However, it turns out to be a dummy as well, and he wonders if Lloyd had decoys with barriers mixed into their number, while his actual body is running around, and thinks that this is more exciting than fighting thousands of demons. Meanwhile, Grim is scared shitless that Lloyd didn't put any barrier on himself, and is just using a basic spell to hide his presence. He wonders why Lloyd would go to such lengths, and recalls Lloyd telling him about the Spell Taker sword, which can absorb a spell to increase one's mana, and also helps to analyze it. Grim can't believe that this psycho is trying to analyze Jade's spell, which he had spent his whole life trying to understand in the middle of such a dangerous battle. Grim is afraid that it will be over soon when Guisarme realizes that they are just hiding in plain sight, and thinks that Lloyd is the biggest certified magic maniac in the world. Lloyd then manages to touch Jade's spell with his sword, and calls out for him, but there is no response. He understands, and dispels all his clones. Guisarme sees Lloyd with a grazed cheek, and is surprised that he actually didn't put up any barriers against Guisarme's attack. He wonders if Lloyd has finally realized that he can't beat him, and asks Lloyd to join him, but Lloyd mocks him that he's just an ugly demon born with power. Although humans are weak, they live life with what they lack, and they're able to build incredible things like magic. Every single spell is rooted from their dreams, which is why sorcery is the most interesting. Guisarme then decides to attack him, and teleports, but Lloyd hits him with his chi technique. Guisarme is shocked that Lloyd predicted where Guisarme was about to be teleported, and Lloyd wonders if this is all an ugly noble demon could do. Guisarme is pissed and tries to attack Lloyd, but he keeps getting his ass kicked by Lloyd. Guisarme thinks that taking damage is not a problem for him as he can instantly regenerate, but the attack does hurt him a lot. Lloyd then uses a high-level spell which sends Guisarme flying, and he ends up in the hole which Lloyd dug up earlier. Lloyd kicks him into the magma, and Guisarme can only teleport in his line of sight. Lloyd predicts his movements, and keeps attacking him. Lloyd thinks that the spell books have always made his imagination run wild, and he has always imagined about the personalities of the people who came up with such spells, because imagining is all he can do. He tells Guisarme that he's having no fun, and if there's nothing else he can show, then it's time for him to die. Guisarme mentions that he will show Lloyd the power of a true demon lord who can freely control mana from their surroundings, and creates a large ball of mana. This is the mortal dark sphere which is capable of reducing anything into oblivion, and he charges it onto Lloyd. However, Lloyd makes it vanish instantly, and Guisarme is shocked. Lloyd explains that he used a spatial class spell called Void to erase his attack. Some time ago, when Lloyd was learning about this spell, he was casually blowing all kinds of things away, and then he had an idea of colliding the same spell with each other, so he lined them up to try it out. Guisarme is scared shitless as it takes an insane amount of mana to create one such attack. However, Lloyd had experimented with so many just for his curiosity, and the collision would always result in voids neutralizing each other. This made Lloyd disappointed just as he's with Guisarme right now, which makes Guisarme mad. He tells Lloyd that he will take over his body, and make good use of his mana. Guisarme then teleports beside Lloyd, and tries to take over his body. However, he is overwhelmed by Lloyd's mana, and Lloyd launches many void spells on Guisarme. Meanwhile, Albert and Diam notice that they can't see anything due to the steam. Just then, the poison mist starts attacking the demons, while Shiro and Sylpha take some of them down. Sylpha notices that the demon's movements are sluggish, and she can smell a sweet scent. However, Ren asks her not to breathe it in too deeply, as it's her poison mist attack, and asks Sylpha to stay away from it, as she doesn't have perfect control over it. Sylpha is relieved that she's not some psycho exhibitionist who is dancing around, and Ren explains that she dresses like this because it helps her disperse her poison more effectively. Meanwhile, Albert checks out his watch, and thinks that the sun should be up by now, but it's still dark, and they wonder if it's due to the steam, while the assassin members think otherwise. We then see Guisarme being sucked into Void's attack, and his regenerate and teleportation ability doesn't seem to work. He decides to abandon the body, but rigor mortis kicks in, which prevents him from leaving the body. Guisarme then tries to fool Lloyd by telling him that his attack got rid of Guisarme, and he's Jade. However, Lloyd has already seen through him, and uses another void spell, crushing Guisarme to his death. Jade's spirit thanks Lloyd, and everyone notices that the sun is up. Ren recalls Jade sharing a rumor with everyone, which was about Lloyd destroying the castle with his magic immediately after his birth, rather than it being an accident caused by fireworks. Jade thinks that such a magical prodigy may be able to remove their curses, while Galilea mentions that if this was true, he'll serve the seventh prince for the rest of his life, and Jade agrees. Back in the present, Lloyd puts up a cross in the memory of Jade, and it's more like a memorial as Void had consumed Jade's body. Grim wonders how Lloyd managed to land the Void spell as it's a slow-moving spell, and Lloyd explains that after deciphering Shadow Wolf, he formulated a spell which let him detect when it was being used after that. He linked this with his reflexes, and casted Void spells, and this way he could dodge and pursue automatically. Grim is surprised that Lloyd was able to figure out such a complex spell while fighting with Guisarme. Lloyd mentions that he only managed to do it because the spell was clearly laid out for him by Jade, and it was not him but Jade who had won this fight. Just then, Albert comes there, and recognizes the grave as Jade's grave, and tells Lloyd that he knows the whole story about how the Assassin Guild came to him after learning about Jade's revolt, but they actually encountered a horde of demons, and Grim realizes that assassin members must have cooked some story to keep Lloyd's abilities secret. Albert tells him that the Assassin Guild members have been taken into custody as they have serious charges on them, however, they intend to make amends by serving Lloyd for the rest of their lives. He tells Lloyd that if these assassins became his retainers and if they commit some blunder, Lloyd would have to bear the responsibility. However, Lloyd agrees to accept them as his retainers, and bear full responsibility. Everyone is moved by his decision, and Albert tells him that he will always be there for his little brother as he loves him so much. Just then, Tao comes rushing in, but realizes that her ugly ass is too late, and she runs away. However, Albert asks Sylpha to go after Tao as he wants to thank Tao for her help with the monster hunt. Sylpha catches Tao, and the assassin members are freed. They are glad that Lloyd is taking them in, and resolve to serve him the best they can. Later, everyone is having a tea party, and Tao is nervous because she didn't expect to do it with so many members of the royal family. Albert tells her that this is a casual gathering, and asks her to have a good time. Tao takes this opportunity to order Sylpha to bring tea, but Sylpha purposely drops it on her, and they start fighting. Albert then asks the assassin members to loosen up as well, and later we see that everyone is drunk. Talia approaches Albert, and notices that he's not drinking with them. He tells her that he's conducting royal business so he'll have to pass, but Talia transfers her drunkenness to him. Albert then approaches Galilea with rage, demanding an explanation on how his sticky fluids ended up on Lloyd, and they realize Albert gets angry when he's drunk. Diam asks Sylpha to stop Albert, but notices that Sylpha is missing, along with Ren and Shiro. We then see Sylpha and the girls enjoying a hot spring which was formed due to Lloyd's attack. Ren tells Sylpha that she wants to serve Lloyd just the way she does.
What do you mean by that?
However, Sylpha tells her to ask Lloyd directly, who agrees, and Ren is shocked to see Lloyd there. Sylpha had dragged him to clean him up properly as he was dirty. Ren asks Lloyd if he's sure of having a poison blighted like her serve him, and Lloyd tells her that she needs to stop calling herself blighted. If she can understand the kind of poison she produces, she could even become a pharmacist that could save many lives, as both medicine and poison are two sides of the same coin. She will need to decipher her power in detail, and formulate a spell based on this. This will be her long-term assignment, and Ren is glad that Lloyd accepted her. She recalls that while everyone was against their powers, Lloyd has never called them blighted even once, and she vows to work hard for him. As the anime comes to an end, we see that Ren has started to serve Lloyd as maid, and Albert made up a story for the king to keep him out of trouble. Lloyd is glad that no one found out about his real ability, and he continues his research on magic. This is where the video ends. Thanks for watching.